let's manifest some hope and say, well, it is a dark time and we're badly polarized, and this is the perfect time for the rebirth of the hero. And that's what Christmas is about. And it's about that at every level. So you can allow that to be reborn in your own heart. That you know, and the birth of Christ is the birth of the logos, right? The word that sets, that extracts order out of chaos. It's the thing that always, eternally sets things right. That's what we're celebrating at Christmas. And you want to welcome that into your heart and into your family. Because if you don't, you're lost. This stuff is so, these ideas are so necessary and so vital that you cannot live without them. And so it's useful to understand profoundly what Christmas means. It means that the Logos is eternally reborn at the darkest period of time. And if you're not on your knees in gratitude for that, then you know very little about the horrors of the world. I've spent a lot of time over the last 3 decades trying to understand Christianity and what the rituals and routines and stories mean, and so that's added another dimension to it. I mean, I understand, for example, the mythological idea that at the darkest point of the year, that's when the hero emerges. That's a very old mythological idea. Of course, you don't need a hero unless the darkness is intense, right? So it makes sense that that's what would call forth a hero, and of course, that's a lot of what's celebrated symbolically at Christmas. The idea of the lights on the trees is the return of illumination, right? Because the sun is starting to come back. All these things are layered on top of one another. And so it's a remarkable, it's one of the things that's really made me so struck as a consequence of studying Christianity, is that so many levels of meaning stack on top of one another in an isomorphic manner. And support one another. You know, there's a cosmic story that's associated with Christmas, which is the death and rebirth of the sun. And then there's, I mean, the actual solar orb. And then there's the, you know, more prosaic story of the birth of a baby, which is, of course, a miraculous event in everyone's life. What we hope is that the time around Christmas gives us a glimpse into what human relations could be like if we organize them very carefully. And I think that that can happen. But the problem is that you don't get peace and goodwill towards man merely by having the time of year. It's something that you really have to work at. And I mean, a lot of the problems that I've indicated that were characteristic of my family and my extended family, we've actually addressed with quite a bit of success over the last 3 decades as a consequence of, well, partly because I became a clinical psychologist and started to understand these things, and because the biochemistry has been more well understood. But it is hard on people around Christmas because, as you said, the hope and the reality, it's a point of the year where hope and reality can war most viciously. So Christ is the eternal infant, the eternal hope, let's say, and the eternal hope of mankind, just like an infant is the eternal hope of mankind. But, you know, he's born in lowly circumstances and in extreme peril, right? Because all the firstborns are under death sentence, essentially. And there's an archetypal element to that, too, which is really important to understand, which is that even if the hero is divine, then he's always born in the extreme danger that characterizes existence itself. And so in some sense, that balance between tragedy and catastrophe and tyranny and hope that typifies Christmas in reality for day-to-day people is also built right into the story. And then, of course, there's all these radical political events going on, and well, that's the way of mankind. Yeah, well, Christianity was like a giant vacuum cleaner in some sense. You know, it certainly integrated itself with and layered itself on top of existing pagan ceremonies, like the tree itself, which is the tree is a very interesting symbol because, of course, the tree is the tree in the Garden of Eden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life. And the tree for Christmas is mostly the tree of life. And the tree is also the structure that unites heaven with earth. And the lights on the tree symbolize or represent even illumination and the reemergence of light in the darkness. And a lot of that was extracted in some sense from the pagan symbolism that existed there prior to Christianity. I mean, the tree idea, for example, that plays a the idea that there's a tree that unites heaven and hell, which is sort of something akin to Jacob's ladder, is a central tenet of shamanism. And there are all sorts of strange shamanic echoes that permeate Christianity. And the Christmas story, like Santa Claus, is a good example. There's very interesting documentation about the relationship between the red and white of Santa Claus, for example, and the use of Amanita muscaria mushrooms among the shamanic, in the shamanic tradition throughout Siberia and across the entire northern strata of Europe. So yeah, it's a very, very deep and strange mixture of desert and frigid cold and celebration. And I guess that's also partly what's given it such longevity as a celebration, even though we also seem to be doing everything we can to undermine that. I was wondering what you thought of Santa Claus, if it's a healthy thing for parents to practice. What's the psychological impact of lying to your child? Look, I think lying is the wrong way of thinking about this. Santa Claus is a game. It's a game of pretend. And children play games of pretend all the time. So I don't see any harm in it at all. Now, you don't want to prolong that belief beyond its natural endpoint, but it's a massive game, and it's a lovely game, and I don't believe that there's anything harmful in it in the least. So now, what's the psychological impact of lying to your child? We can think about that more generally. Don't lie to your children. Don't lie, period. Lying is a really bad idea. It's a really bad idea. It never works. You might think it works, but that's only because you're blind to the consequences and probably willfully blind. Plus, it's a terrible weight. If you don't lie, there's a lot fewer things to keep track of. Your life is a lot more pristine and crystalline. And then things that come your way, maybe you deserve in some small measure. And it's a bad idea to lie. Now, but I don't think it's a bad idea to play pretend games with your children. I think that's okay.